At 8 in the morning, the eyeliner is flawless, a dark line across the upper lid, drawn with a steady hand at the bathroom mirror. That was 8 o'clock. By 10, the line has thinned to a shadow. By midday, there is a gray smudge in the crease that nobody drew there. And by 4 in the afternoon, the lid is bare, while a faint print of eyeliner sits above the fold, stamped onto skin it never touched. The liner is not failing, it is relocating. And on a hooded, mature eyelid, that relocation is predictable enough to outsmart. So where does a smudge like that come from, if the hand was steady and the line was clean at 8? It comes from the architecture of the eyelid itself, and from what quietly changes in that architecture past 45. Makeup artists who work on older faces solved this backstage years ago with a method built around 2 placements that standard eyeliner instructions never mention. Pigment pressed into the upper waterline where there is no skin to fold, and a small flick mapped with the eyes open, set above the fold where it can be seen. What follows is the complete method in working order, from why the old line disappears to where the new one goes, how to map it with 2 dots, which pencil formula can hold it, and how to seal the whole thing so it is still in place when the day ends. One warning belongs up front. The pencil already sitting in the makeup bag is very likely the exact formula that guarantees the 4 o'clock print, and the reason sits on its own ingredient list. Begin with the word hooded, because it names a structure rather than a flaw. Every upper eyelid has a mobile lid, the platform of skin where eyeliner is traditionally drawn, and above it, a fold of skin descending from beneath the brow. On a hooded eye, that fold drapes low enough to rest on the platform whenever the eye is open. Age deepens the effect. Dermatologists point to 2 quiet changes: a steady loss of collagen and elastin that lets the skin of the brow and upper lid slacken and drift downward, and a gradual thinning of eyelid skin that was already the thinnest skin on the body. The surplus fold even carries a clinical name: dermatochalasis, the term a dermatologist writes down when loose upper lid skin starts resting where the eyeliner used to go. The result is easy to observe in any magnifying mirror. Eyes closed, the whole lid is visible, and the drawn line looks perfect. Eyes open, the fold comes down like a curtain, and the line disappears behind it. Disappearing is only the first problem. The larger problem is contact. All day long, the underside of that fold rests directly on the drawn line, skin against skin, warm and lightly pressed together. Every blink slides the 2 surfaces across each other, and every smile or squint presses them tighter. An adult blinks somewhere around 15 to 20 times a minute, which turns one gentle contact into thousands of small polishing strokes before lunch. The liner is buffed off the lid and pressed onto the hood, one blink at a time. The gray print above the crease at 4 in the afternoon is a transfer, as literal as ink pressed onto paper, and the midday smudge is the same pigment collecting in the one channel where the 2 skins meet. Reviews describe the pattern with striking consistency. Women in their 50s reporting that a liner which held for 20 years began ghosting into the crease within a single season on the same eye with the same practiced hand, because the surface underneath it had gradually become a different surface. A quick test at the mirror confirms all of it. Draw the usual line, look straight ahead, and note how much of it survives the eye opening. Whatever vanishes is sitting in the transfer zone, and on strongly hooded eyes that can be nearly the entire line, which explains a frustrating afternoon better than any theory could. The geography explains where the liner goes. The formula explains how easily it travels, and the pencil deserves scrutiny here. A classic kohl pencil glides because it is built from soft waxes and rich emollients. Ingredients like mineral oil, lanolin, and plant triglycerides, chosen so the tip melts slightly against skin warmth and deposits color without tugging. On a young, flat lid, that comfort is harmless. But an emollient never dries. It stays movable for as long as it is worn, and anything movable obeys whatever touches it. The skin's own sebum softens it further, and the silicones in a morning eye cream, dimethicone chief among them, spread beneath it like a lubricated floor. Within an hour of application, the kohl has warmed to skin temperature and is, in formulation terms, still wet paint inside a working hinge. By the end of the day, the lid has usually reclaimed all of it, and the only evidence the liner existed is the print it left behind on the hood. The opposite formula would seem like the obvious answer, a waterproof liquid liner that dries down hard. Liquid liners rely on film formers, acrylate's copolymer and its relatives, which cure into a thin, plastic-like layer, and on a smooth young surface that layer genuinely does not budge. But mature lid skin is finely crept, soft, and in motion all day, and a rigid film laid over flexing texture behaves the way rigid films behave on any moving surface. It cracks along the fold lines, lifts at the edges, and sheds in fragments by midday, which reviewers over 40 report almost word for word, describing a liner that cracked and flaked rather than smearing. Makeup artists give the same verdict in working terms, that long-wear formulas were engineered on the flat, taut lids of 20-year-old models, and the promises on the packaging were never tested against a fold. Both chemistries lose to the same fold, and the verdict is worth stating plainly. The fault sits with the chemistry, meeting the anatomy, never with the hand that drew the line, and no amount of careful drawing was ever going to fix it. The same glide that makes a kohl feel gentle is the property that carries it into the crease, and the same toughness that keeps a liquid liner on a 20-year-old lid is the property that shatters it on an older one. Therefore, the method that works begins by leaving the fold's path entirely. The first placement is called tightlining, and makeup artists have leaned on it backstage for decades under a plainer name, invisible eyeliner. Instead of drawing on the skin above the lashes, the pigment goes underneath them, pressed into the upper waterline, the damp, firm ledge running along the inside edge of the upper lid where the lash roots grow. Two properties make that ledge valuable. It does not fold because it is braced against the eye itself rather than hanging in loose skin, and it never meets the hood because the lashes stand between them. Pigment placed there fills the pale gaps between individual lash roots, so from the front the effect reads as a denser, darker lash line rather than as makeup. Beauty editors tend to describe the result in the same terms, that the eyes simply look more awake and the lashes look thicker, with no visible line for anyone to find, which is why they often point the technique at women who feel eyeliner has started to look severe on them, since the depth arrives without an edge. And because nothing rests on moving skin, midday comes and nothing has traveled. The definition placed at 8 in the morning is still exactly where it was put, doing quiet work at the base of the lashes. The tight line alone would already improve things, but it solves depth, and hooded eyes usually want one thing more, lift. The second placement supplies it, a small flick at the outer corner, carrying one strict condition. It must be mapped with the eyes open. The traditional wing is drawn on a closed lid, judged on a closed lid, and admired on a closed lid, which is a face nobody else ever sees. The moment the eye opens, a hooded fold swallows a closed lid wing whole, or worse, folds it in half and prints it. The open eye flick works from the opposite direction. The eyes stay open and level. The flick is positioned on the skin that remains visible above the fold, and only then is it connected back toward the lashes. Placed that way, it sits on stable ground, clears the transfer zone, and lifts the outer corner for every hour the eyes are open. Reading glasses and photographs both record the open eye, never the closed lid, so a flick placed for the open eye also reads through a lens and in pictures exactly as it was drawn, which closed lid wings never did. Together, the two placements divide the job that one drawn line kept failing. The waterline supplies the depth, The flick supplies the lift, and the folding platform between them carries nothing at all, which leaves the hood nothing to erase. The check in the mirror, straight on, is simple. Lashes that look fuller, one small clean flick, and no visible line anywhere on the lid. Before the mapping begins, a word from aging queens. This channel takes apart makeup at the formula level, ingredient by ingredient, to show what each one actually does on mature skin, so the products working against an older face stop earning a place in the makeup bag. Subscribing keeps those breakdowns coming, and more of them are already on the way. The mapping itself takes 2 dots and about a minute, and it depends more on the right setup than on a steady hand. The setup is a mirror at eye level, ideally near a window with daylight coming from the front, and for anyone who normally wears reading glasses, a magnifying mirror propped on the bathroom counter so the glasses can come off without losing the detail. Chin level, shoulders down, face at rest. The resting face matters more than it sounds, because the instinct at a mirror is to raise the eyebrows to see better, and raised brows lift the hood into a position it will not hold. A flick mapped on a lifted brow is mapped for a face that vanishes the moment the forehead relaxes, so the brows stay down, however unflattering the resting view looks in the glass. The resting view is the face the flick has to work on. Step 1 is the anchor dot. Looking straight ahead, place a single small dot just past the outer corner of the eye, following the direction the lower lash line already points, up and out toward the tail of the brow. Height is the decision that matters. The dot must sit on skin that stays visible while the eye is open, which on a hooded eye means the lower edge of the visible zone above the fold, never tucked beneath it. A dot that disappears the instant it is placed has landed in the fold's territory and needs to move up a fraction and try again. Step 2 is the tip dot 2 to 3 millimeters beyond the first, along the same upward direction. On hooded eyes, restraint wins. A long wing needs runway, and the runway is precisely the real estate the hood has claimed, so the flick stays short, more punctuation than flourish. Makeup artists who specialize in older faces repeat the same proportion, that the flick should be small enough to read as lash shadow and angled up enough to read as lift. Step 3 is the connection, and only now does the eye close, briefly, for one short stroke joining the outer lashes to the anchor dot and continuing to the tip, thickened slightly at the base. Then the eye opens for judgment, because of what could be called the broken line rule. On the closed lid, this flick will look wrong. Detached, floating above the natural lash line with a visible gap beneath it, possibly at an odd angle. That is the evidence it was placed correctly. The eye opens, the fold comes down, the gap disappears underneath it, and the flick appears to grow straight out of the lash line, connected and lifted. A flick that looks right closed will look wrong open, and a flick that looks right open must look broken closed. Only one of those two faces goes out into the world. Symmetry comes last, and it obeys the same principle. No two hoods drape identically, so matching the eyes by studying each closed lid produces 2 perfect lines and 1 lopsided face. Match them open instead, straight into the mirror, judging both flicks at once by their angle and their distance from each outer corner. When the dots on the left sit level with the dots on the right in a straight-ahead gaze, the map has passed its check. The placement is now solved. Whether it survives past lunch is decided by the pencil itself, and the pencil is where the classic makeup bag usually loses the day. What this method asks of a pencil is a contradiction. Glide for the first minute, and stubbornness for the next 10 hours, and one formula category was engineered to deliver exactly that, the long wear gel pencil. The mechanism is worth understanding because it is what separates a gel from the coal it resembles in the hand. A gel pencil suspends its pigment in volatile silicones, ingredients like isododecane and cyclopentasiloxane, light fluids designed to evaporate on contact with skin warmth. For roughly the first minute, the pencil glides like a coal. Then the carrier flashes off and leaves the working layer behind. Pigment locked into flexible film formers and structuring waxes. Flexible is the operative word. The set film bends with a blink instead of cracking the way a liquid liner does, and it holds no free oils for the skin to reclaim, so it shrugs off the sebum and the eye cream residue that dissolve a kohl by midday. Reading a label for this takes half a minute in the makeup aisle. The words to look for on the front are gel, waterproof, long wear, or smudge-proof. The confirmation on the back is one of the volatile carriers, isododecane or cyclopentasiloxane, sitting high on the ingredient list, often alongside a film former with a bulky name like trimethylsiloxysilicate. The words that disqualify a pencil for this particular job are kohl in any spelling and creamy as a selling point, along with mineral oil or lanolin leading the list, because those pencils are built to never set, and never setting is the entire problem being solved. But the gel's strength arrives with a deadline attached, and the deadline is the detail the packaging never mentions. Once the carrier evaporates, somewhere between 30 and 90 seconds in, the pencil is done negotiating. Any softening, smudging, or correcting has to happen inside that window, so the sensible rhythm is one eye at a time, placed, adjusted, and then left alone. For anyone unsure what is already in the drawer at home, the back of the hand settles it. Draw a short line, wait 1 full minute by the clock, then rub it firmly with a fingertip. A smear announces kohl behavior. A dry mark that flexes with the skin and stays put announces gel behavior, and that is a pencil that can hold a waterline. Because half of this method lives on the waterline, 2 further requirements apply. The pencil should be labeled safe for the waterline or ophthalmologist tested, since this is pigment sitting a millimeter from the eye itself. And hygiene carries part of the load, which is why many makeup artists still prefer a wooden pencil over a twist-up for waterline work, sharpened before every single use so that a fresh, clean surface touches the eye each time. Optometrists add 2 rules of their own. Contact lenses go in before the liner, never after, and the waterline stays completely bare during an eye infection, an allergy flare, or a stretch of angry dry eye, because no technique is worth an irritated cornea. Color, finally, is a smaller decision than the display wall suggests. Soft black gives the strongest definition, but a deep chocolate brown reads fuller and kinder, against lashes that have thinned or begun to silver. Which is why artists who work with older clients reach for brown far more often than the cosmetics counter does. The right pencil is now chosen. The next stage is the actual sleight of hand, getting that pencil underneath the lashes so that the line exists without ever being visible. The application starts with a blot, and the blot looks optional. It quietly decides whether the pigment stays. The upper waterline is a wet surface, bathed in tears and in oil from the meibomian glands, a row of tiny glands opening along that exact ledge to keep the tear film from evaporating. Useful biology, terrible painting conditions, since oil and water are the 2 things pigment cannot grip. So the sequence begins with clean hands and a freshly sharpened pencil, then a clean cotton swab or the folded corner of a tissue, pressed gently along the upper waterline for a second or 2, lifting the moisture and lending the gel a briefly dry ledge to bond with, while its carrier evaporates. The position comes next, and it inverts the usual eyeliner stance. Chin up, mirror low, set flat on the counter or held at chest height with the gaze directed down into it. Tipping the head back while looking down makes the upper lid lift softly away from the eye on its own, exposing the full waterline without a single finger pulling at the skin. That matters on a mature lid because stretching crepey skin, taut, marking it and releasing it plants a line that buckles the moment the skin relaxes. In this position, nothing is stretched, so nothing snaps back. Then the placement itself. The pencil tip lies almost flat against the underside of the lashes, and the motion is a press and a small wiggle, repeated in short overlapping touches, working from the outer corner inward across the outer 2/3 of the eye. No drawn stroke, no dragging, just pigment, pushed up into the seam where the lash roots meet the lid, filling the pale gaps between them. The inner third can stay bare, since the eye waters most toward the tear duct, and definition there tends to read harsh rather than wide. One blink settles everything, and then the formula needs its minute of stillness to set. For slightly more density, there is a second pass that still draws no line. From above this time, looking down into the same low mirror, the pencil tip touches into the spaces between the lash roots on the top side, individual dots rather than a stroke, letting the dots and the tightline meet through the lashes. Makeup artists call the combined effect a stealth lash line, and at conversation distance, it simply reads as a woman whose lashes grew in thicker than everyone remembered. Two boundaries keep it flattering. The lower waterline stays empty because ringing the eye underneath tends to close it down and pull attention toward the shadows beneath it, the opposite of the lift this method is building. And mascara comes after the tightline. Never before, wiggled upward from the roots, so the darkened base and the lashes read as one structure. The checkpoint for this stage is a plain white tissue. After the set minute, press the tissue flat beneath the lower lashes and blink twice. A clean tissue means the line has sealed. Gray dots on the tissue mean too much product, or a waterline that was still wet, so the fix is another blot and a lighter touch, and the check runs again. When the tissue comes away clean, the invisible half of the method is finished and holding. What remains is the part of the day the bathroom mirror never sees, the 8 hours of heat, screens, skincare, and absent-minded rubbing between application and removal, and a few small habits that separate a line that survives until dinner from a line that only survives the commute. The first threat is friendly fire from skincare. A rich eye cream is built from the very ingredients this method just banished: emollients and heavyweight silicones such as dimethicone, and dermatologists note that those textures do not stay where they are padded. Within an hour of application, skin warmth thins them, and they begin migrating upward across the lid, laying a lubricated film beneath everything drawn on top and loosening the base of the flick from below. The fix costs nothing. In the morning, eye cream stays on the orbital bone, the firm ridge around the socket, and off the mobile lid entirely, with the rich nighttime version saved for hours when there is no makeup left to undermine. Then, immediately before the liner, one sweep of a cotton pad dampened with micellar water travels along the lash line and the flick zone, followed by a moment to dry. Micellar water carries mild surfactants that lift away sebum and leftover skincare film, handing the gel pencil bare, grippy skin instead of a greased surface. The tightline needs nothing further since it is braced against the eye. The flick, sitting out on open skin, accepts one extra layer of insurance, borrowed from every professional makeup kit. With a small flat brush, press a matching matte eyeshadow or a whisper of translucent powder built on silica, directly over the set flick. Silica and its relatives absorb the surface oil skin, produces all afternoon, and the pressed powder mats into the gel film and gives it a locked, toothy finish. Pressed rather than swept, it anchors the color without dulling it, and it buys the flick the same endurance the waterline already has. Through the day itself, the enemies are hands and heat. Screen fatigue and allergy season both invite rubbing, and one knuckle dragged across the eye at 3 o'clock undoes chemistry that survived everything else. So the standing rule is blot. Never rub. A clean tissue, press still against the itch until it passes. At any midday touch-up, powder goes near the eye before anything creamy does. Kept to those habits, the end-of-day ranking is remarkably consistent, and reviewers over 40 describe it almost verbatim, that by evening the foundation has faded and the lipstick is long gone, while the tightline is still standing at the lash roots, the last piece of makeup to surrender. The final discipline is taking it off because a film built to resist an entire day will resist a splash of water just as easily, and scrubbing at it is the one real harm this method could cause. The tool is a biphase remover, the bottle that separates into 2 layers and asks for a shake, because its oil phase, typically isododecane, once again is the correct solvent for the film formers in the pencil. Soak a cotton pad, hold it gently over the closed eye for a slow count of 20 while the solvent works, then wipe downward once. No back and forth. Eyelid skin loses moisture faster than any other skin on the body through a process called transepidermal water loss, the slow leak through a weakened barrier, and repeated rubbing chips at exactly that barrier, leaving lids drier and crepier and making every future morning's makeup harder to place. Dermatologists class gentle removal as skincare in its own right, and in this method it counts as the final step of application. Assembled in order, the whole routine runs like this. Eye cream to the orbital bone only, a micellar swab along the lash line, a moment to dry, a blot of the upper waterline, then chin up, mirror low, and the gel pencil pressed and wiggled beneath the outer 2/3 of the lashes. 60 seconds of patience, and the tissue check. Eyes open and level for 2 small dots past the outer corner, 1 short stroke to connect them, and the broken line rule to confirm the flick belongs to the open eye. A press of powder over the flick, mascara wiggled up from the roots, and then hands off until the biphase pad at night. Perhaps 10 minutes at the mirror, generously counted, much of it spent waiting for formulas to set. And where the method goes wrong, it goes wrong in the same few places. Brows raised during mapping, which plants the flick in vanishing territory. A wing drawn long out of old habit, when short is what clears the fold. A skipped waterline blot which sets pigment sliding on oil. Symmetry judged on closed lids instead of open eyes. And scrubbing at removal, which trades tonight's convenience for next month's texture. Each one is a small correction, and none demands a steadier hand than the one already holding the pencil, which returns everything to the 8 o'clock mirror. Same bathroom, same light, same steady hand. The difference is that nothing is parked in the fold's path anymore. The color lives at the lash roots where skin does not fold, and in one small flick above the fold where skin does not move. So 4 in the afternoon arrives, and the crease is clean, because nothing was ever left where the crease could take it. Underneath the technique sits the pattern that keeps proving itself across mature makeup, placement that respects how older skin actually moves, flexible films chosen over rigid ones, and over formulas that never set at all, and less pigment positioned precisely, doing more than a heavy line ever managed on impossible ground. Eye products fail older faces when they ignore that pattern, and this method works because it is built on it. That is the whole pattern, and it is the reason Aging Queens exists, to trace every disappointing product back to the ingredient list that explains it, so mature skin stops taking the blame for a formula's decisions. Subscribing brings the next breakdowns as they publish, and the comments are open. Name the eyeliner that keeps vanishing and how long it takes to go.